There are moments silent, invisible, and yet thunderously loud, when a man feels absolutely nothing. No fire, no drive, no pain, no pleasure, no direction. A gray fog settles over his soul, and he stares at the hours slipping through his fingers with the dull ache of indifference. This is not depression. This is not despair. It is far worse. It is numbness, and it is the greatest test of the human spirit. Let me tell you, the man who succeeds is not always the one who feels like it. He is the one who forces himself when every ounce of his body says, rest, when his mind whispers, what's the use, and when the world offers no applause, no reward, no immediate result. The man who forces himself in those empty hours is the man who becomes uncommon among common men. The average man believes that he must wait for inspiration, for some divine spark, before he can act. But inspiration is not a gift from the heavens. It is extracted by force from the depths of your own will. You do not wait for fire to warm your bones. You strike the match. And you strike it when you feel coldest. So when you feel nothing, strike. Stand, move, speak, write, build, sell, train, act. For in that very act you summon the very forces of nature that will return your feeling, your purpose, your burning reason for being. The man who will not act unless he feels like it becomes a slave to feeling. And feelings are poor masters. But the man who commands himself to move when no feeling is present becomes master of his fate. Therein lies the secret most men will never learn. Your greatest power is born not when you feel unstoppable, but when you feel nothing at all and still take the next step. Every great builder, conqueror, or creator has faced this. Thomas Edison, in his thousands of failed attempts, did not feel alive with joy each morning. Carnegie did not wake each day with overwhelming certainty. Ford did not always feel invincible. Yet they moved. Yet they acted. They forced themselves until the emotion followed the motion. They stirred their own waters, and then greatness answered. Most will quit during these quiet seasons, not because they are defeated, but because they feel nothing and mistake that absence for a sign. It is no sign. It is no warning. It is a challenge, an initiation into your higher self. And the price of admission is action taken without emotion. When your hands feel lifeless and your heart is hollow and your mind is fogged, that is the hour to move your feet. For the fire you are seeking lies just on the other side of movement. What separates the legendary from the forgotten is this. Those who are remembered move when it's hardest to move. They rise when there is no crowd, no cheering, no promise. They force themselves because they understand that all feelings follow action, not the other way around. When the silence is loudest, when the loneliness is thickest, when the future is foggiest, this is your moment. This is the laboratory of greatness. For in these moments you can either shape your will like steel or you can melt like wax. Force yourself, get up, do the work, show up again. You are not your feelings. You are your decisions. You are what you do when your soul is quiet and the world is asleep. There comes a peculiar hour in every man's journey when he feels absolutely nothing. Not joy, not sorrow, not rage, not love, just stillness, an emotionless vacuum where ambition dries up, energy fades, and the flame of desire grows faint. Most mistake this moment for weakness. They misread it as a warning, a divine signal that they must stop, retreat, or reconfigure their path. But this is not a warning, it is a test. And not just any test, it is the test. The one moment that separates the drifters from the determined, the wishes from the warriors, the pretenders from the producers. This emotionless space, this mental desert is the trial all must pass to reach the highest ranks of success. When you feel nothing, you are standing at a crossroad. One path leads to surrender. The other demands force. In the first, you sit still, and the silence becomes your cage. In the second, you move forward, not because you're inspired, not because you're driven, but because your will commands it. That is the force that builds nations, transforms legacies, and awakens dormant greatness. A man cannot claim strength if he only moves when he feels strong. He cannot claim discipline if he only acts when he is motivated. That's the behavior of children, not of conquerors. The man who breaks through the numbness and rises despite it is the man who discovers his true self. He strips away the external rewards, the social approval, the dopamine rushes, and faces the raw reality. That to become something extraordinary, he must earn it without emotion to fuel him. He must push through the fog on sheer decision. And it is precisely in these barren hours that the world is watching. Not with eyes, but with laws. Universal laws, laws that reward motion, not feelings. Laws that shape the outcome for the few who dare to act when the soul is quiet. Think of the giants of history. Do you believe they felt inspired every day? Do you think Edison, facing 1,000 failed experiments, always felt hopeful? Or Carnegie, pushing through fierce industrial storms, always felt confident? Or Lincoln, in the loneliest seat of leadership, felt unshakably courageous? No, but they moved anyway. They woke up, dressed the part, walked the part, spoke the part, even when the world was gray and their hearts were hollow. And because they forced themselves when others froze, the world gave them its respect, its attention, and its rewards. This test is subtle. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't ring bells or flash warnings. It just shows up one morning, you open your eyes, and nothing stirs inside. The passion is gone. The vision is blurred. Your mind feels like a blank page. This is where most men hit the snooze button. Not just on the alarm clock, but on life. They say, I'll wait until I feel like it again. And so they wait, and wait, and wait. But the feeling doesn't return. Because feelings don't lead, they follow. When you understand this, everything changes. You realize that the dull hours are your greatest opportunity. Not because they are pleasant, but because they are pure. They strip away the noise and ask, will you act from strength alone? Not for attention, not for applause, not for instant gratification, but simply because you said you would. That is integrity. That is power. That is the kind of will that bends the world in your direction. Men who live by emotion drift with the wind. One day they are blazing with enthusiasm. The next, they are sunk in laziness. But the man who acts when there is no wind becomes the wind. He becomes the force that others feel. His discipline, forged in those emotionless mornings, becomes his advantage. Because while others are checking in with their feelings, asking themselves if they feel like showing up, he has already shown up. While they are journaling about their lack of clarity, he is building clarity by moving forward. There is a myth, dangerous and seductive, that says we must feel ready to begin, that we must wait for the spark before we light the fire. But that myth kills more dreams than failure ever could. Readiness is not a feeling, it's a decision. And the men who win are the ones who understand that their highest responsibility is not to feel, it is to act. They take the first step, not because it feels good, but because it must be taken. They train their bodies, speak their truth, write their plans, build their futures. When the world offers no energy, no warmth, no recognition, that's when they're at their most powerful. Because in that moment, there is no external reward to corrupt the intention. There is only raw willpower, untouched by emotion, pure in its purpose. This is why most people remain average, not because they lack talent, but because they wait for the perfect conditions that never come. They wait for motivation, but motivation was never coming. The test was always there, quietly asking, what will you do when you feel nothing? Most run, a few rise, and those few shape history. The world has lied to you about motivation. It told you that first you must feel something, passion, excitement, hunger, and then you will act. It told you that the engine must be hot before the wheels can turn. But the truth is the opposite. The real formula, the one that the high achievers, the self-made giants, and the disciplined few live by, is that motion comes before emotion. Movement precedes feeling. Action ignites inspiration, not the other way around. Those who wait to feel ready, to feel energetic, to feel creative, are unknowingly building their lives on a foundation of delay and disappointment. Watch any man who has mastered his craft and you will notice something strange. He does not wait to be inspired to begin. He begins and then the inspiration arrives. He opens the book and then the mind awakens. He puts on his shoes, steps outside, and then the energy comes. He sits at the desk, starts typing, and then the creativity flows. This is the hidden key. You must force yourself into motion, even when you feel nothing, especially when you feel nothing, because that motion is what pulls the spark back into your bones. The reason most people fail to become consistent is because they've built their identity around emotion. They think of themselves as someone who works hard. When they feel driven, someone who shows up. When they feel confident, someone who takes action when they feel courageous. But that mindset is like trying to light a fire with wet wood. It's unreliable, frustrating, and ultimately futile. The disciplined man flips the process. He acts first. He doesn't wait for fire. He creates it by striking again and again until the flame rises. There are days when you will wake up and feel like nothing matters. No excitement, no urgency, no direction. These are the days that define you. If you can move, then when your heart is silent and your mind is foggy, you unlock a force most men never touch. Most retreat. They say, today is not the day. They wait for clarity, but clarity is not something that appears. It is something that is forged. You don't sit still and hope for inspiration. You take the first step, and in that movement you summon it. The secret is that emotion is not the driver of discipline. It is its reward. You do not feel powerful before the workout. You feel powerful after. You do not feel creative before writing the first sentence. You feel creative after. You do not feel proud before you keep your promises. You feel proud after. The emotions you are craving, the passion you think you need to begin, those are the fruit of action, not the seed. If you wait for the fruit before you plant the tree, you will starve your potential to death. This truth is harsh, because it leaves no room for excuses. If feelings do not lead action, then the only question is, will you act or won't you? Will you take the step or will you wait? And with that choice, a man either rises or remains stuck. Those who rise have learned to tie their identity not to how they feel, but to what they do. They get up because they said they would. They move because it's who they are. They don't ask their feelings for permission. They train their feelings to follow their actions like a soldier follows his commander. People ask, how do I become more motivated? The answer is, stop trying to feel motivated and start moving. Get up, start small. Do the first thing, the next thing, the hard thing. Your body and mind are waiting for orders. They respond to movement. They respond to leadership. If you refuse to lead yourself through action, your feelings will always lead you in circles. Think about a train. It starts slowly, grinding forward, building momentum. At first it feels like nothing's happening, but the movement compounds. Eventually that train moves with a force that nothing can stop. That's what happens when you act before you feel. You build internal momentum. You start to believe in your own force. You start to see that you are not at the mercy of your emotions. You are their architect. The mind is a tool, not a master. It will follow your body's movement. The feelings you think you lack are waiting to be called forth by effort, but they will not arrive until you act. And the more you train this principle, the more you reinforce the truth that you can summon energy, creativity, power, and discipline on command. Not because you always have them, but because you always build them through motion. Through every champion, every creator, every entrepreneur who built something real, something legendary, knows this law. They've lived it. They've woken up empty and moved anyway. They've sat down uninspired and produced anyway. They've stepped into the fight without adrenaline and won anyway. Not because they felt like it, but because they understood. Motion creates feeling, not the other way around. They taught themselves to move first, and they let their emotions catch up. That's how they won. That's how they kept winning. Willpower begins when feelings end. That's the moment most people misunderstand and fear. They believe that strength is something you tap into when you're already energized, when you're already lit up inside, when the world is already supporting you. But that's not willpower. That's momentum borrowed from comfort. Real willpower starts the moment your feelings go silent, when there is no excitement, no inspiration, no fire burning in your chest. That's when the strongest version of you has a chance to rise. Because when there's nothing left to lean on emotionally, all that remains is choice. And in that choice lies your greatest power. Most people never reach their true potential because they've trained themselves to act only when the emotional environment is favorable. They chase energy, and when energy fades, they stall. They chase desire, and when desire disappears, so does their discipline. Their actions are owned by mood swings, by fatigue, by stress, by self-doubt, and they wonder why they never build anything solid. But the man who separates himself from the pack is the man who no longer asks his emotions for permission to proceed. He understands that willpower is not something you use when it's convenient. It's something you become when nothing is convenient at all. Look closely at every man who has built something lasting. You'll notice one thing. They've all acted through emotional droughts. They've made hard choices without applause. They've kept promises in silence. They've lifted their head off the pillow, not because they felt like it, but because they trained their spirit to rise no matter the weight pressing against it. They've endured ridicule, boredom, fatigue, and failure, and they've acted anyway, because their compass was not set by how they felt. It was set by what they decided. That's the edge. That's where willpower lives. There will come days when the world doesn't notice your effort, when no one claps for your discipline, when progress is invisible. And if you haven't built the ability to act without emotional reinforcement, you'll crumble. But if you've trained yourself to operate when nothing supports you, then you've become dangerous, because nothing can stop you. You will not need a reason. You will not wait for signs. You will create direction with your own two hands. That's what true willpower is, creating forward motion in a storm of stillness. It's easy to feel like a warrior when the path is lit and the heart is full. It's easy to show up when the world is watching and the energy is high. But what about when no one sees you? What about when it's dark, quiet, and your mind tells you that rest is easier, that today doesn't matter, that you can try again tomorrow? That's the moment your internal war begins, and most people lose that war because they rely on motivation. But motivation is a fair weather friend. Willpower is the soldier that shows up in the mud, in the rain, in the frost, in the fire, and does the job anyway. Your emotions were never built to carry you all the way through. They're signals, not engines. They can start a spark, but they cannot sustain a blaze. The fire that lasts is the one that you feed with action, especially when you feel nothing. Especially when you feel broken. Especially when the desire to quit is louder than the desire to win. That's where real power is born, not in the highs, but in your ability to continue through the lows. When you move through emotional emptiness, you stop being average. You become your own fuel source. You tap into a level of inner strength that most people never even meet. And it's not because you were gifted something special. It's because you stopped waiting. You stopped expecting life to hand you the perfect moment. You decided that the perfect moment is the one you create by acting when no one would blame you for standing still. This is where you build resilience. Not in the moments when things go your way, but in the hours when nothing feels good, when success feels distant, when doubt feels heavy. If you can move then, if you can force your body into discipline while your mind screams otherwise, you will earn something no external reward can give you. You will earn ownership of yourself. And that kind of power doesn't fade. It compounds. It transforms the way you approach every situation. Because once you've proven that you can act without emotion, you've proven that you're in charge. Not your stress, not your fatigue, not your uncertainty. There are people in this world who will never experience their full strength, simply because they never make it past the wall of emotion. They hit the numbness and turn back. They hit the boredom and slow down. They hit the resistance and decide to wait for the feelings to return. But the few who keep going, who climb over that wall with blood and sweat and silence, they find out something remarkable. They find that their best work, their clearest vision, and their most lasting transformation doesn't come from excitement or mood. It comes from raw, quiet decision. The kind of decision that's made with cold hands and a burning soul. The kind of decision that makes you unstoppable. Discipline is louder than desire. In a world screaming about passion and purpose, it is discipline that does the heavy lifting in silence. Desire is glamorous. It's loud in the beginning, seductive in its promises, persuasive in its tone. It convinces you to start something new, to set bold goals, to make big plans. But desire is a sprinter. It begins with speed and ends with exhaustion. Discipline, however, is the marathoner. It doesn't need applause or excitement. It simply moves. It doesn't care how you feel, how tired you are, or how boring the task is. It just shows up again and again with steel in its spine and fire in its belly. And when the dust settles, it is discipline that is still standing, not desire. Desire can take you to the gym on day 1. Discipline takes you there on day 100. Desire can make you write the first page of your book. Discipline writes the last chapter. Desire loves the dream. Discipline builds the dream with blood, repetition, and precision. It's easy to be driven when everything is new, but that drive fades. The dopamine wears off. The novelty disappears. And that's where discipline steps in, not with emotion, but with execution. It doesn't ask if you feel like it. It doesn't wait for the right mood. It follows one law: do the work no matter what. The man ruled by desire is a slave to mood swings. One day he's full of energy and ambition. The next he's paralyzed by doubt and fatigue. He starts a project with enthusiasm but quits as soon as the excitement fades. He says he wants success, but he hasn't trained himself to endure the boring, gritty, invisible effort that success demands. He's motivated only when the fire is burning. The problem is, real greatness is forged when the fire goes out and the room turns cold. That's when discipline lights a new fire, not in the world, but in your own chest. A fire not of emotion, but of commitment. Discipline is the daily decision to do what must be done even when you feel like doing anything else. It's waking up early without reward. It's saying no to short-term pleasure in favor of long-term strength. It's pushing through when nobody claps, when nobody sees you, when nobody believes in you, not even yourself. It's not heroic, it's not flashy, it's not always inspiring, but it is unshakable. And in a noisy world full of people talking about their goals, it is the quiet man of discipline who achieves them. Think of a craftsman who carves stone. He doesn't strike once and expect perfection. He strikes every day, hundreds of times, often without seeing immediate progress. That is discipline. He doesn't rely on emotion to lift the hammer. He lifts it because that's what he does. The disciplined man behaves like this. He builds, carves, creates, refines. Not when he feels good, but because it is part of who he is. And slowly, without notice, without fanfare, he constructs a masterpiece while others are still waiting to feel motivated enough to begin. The lie the world sells you is that you need to be in the right mood to take action. But the truth is, the right mood often follows the right action. When you move your body, your mind follows. When you begin your work, your focus sharpens. When you commit to your path, your purpose strengthens. But none of that happens if you wait for desire, because desire may knock, but it doesn't stay. Discipline is the only guest that lives in your house every day. There is a difference between being interested and being committed. Desire is interest. It flares up when it's convenient. Discipline is commitment. It stays loyal when it's hard. That's why the man of discipline always wins in the long game. Not because he had more talent, more time, or more support, but because he stayed when others left. He showed up when others slept. He endured what others escaped. He followed through when others folded. That is not romantic, but it is rare, and that rarity makes him unstoppable. There is no easy way to strength, no shortcut to self-mastery. Every road that leads to power is paved with repetition. Boring, predictable, unglamorous repetition. And the only force strong enough to walk that road daily is discipline. It is the root of every strong body, every sharp mind, every wealthy enterprise, every lasting legacy. Strip away the passion, the motivation, the inspiration, and what's left, the work. The unskippable, unfiltered, essential work. And only one thing keeps you there long enough to reap the reward. Discipline. Desire fades in darkness. Discipline thrives in it. It doesn't care about conditions. It doesn't need encouragement. It is built in silence and revealed in results. Every time you choose to act without excitement, every time you move without momentum, he doesn't need loud music or caffeine or praise. He moves on command. He trains his will to lead, not follow. And in that training, he becomes a man that cannot be shaken by feeling failure or fear. There is a hidden war taking place within every man. A war between what he feels and what he wants. And make no mistake, the victory always goes to the side he feeds most. If he feeds feelings, he becomes a slave to comfort, ruled by distraction, forever chasing ease and escaping effort. But if he feeds vision, if he chooses the long term over the short term, the mission over the mood, the outcome over the obstacle, he becomes powerful. Not because the path gets easier, but because he becomes harder, sharper, clearer in purpose. And that kind of man doesn't wait to feel ready. He decides he is ready and moves with or without permission from his emotions. The truth that most refuse to face is this: you will never feel like doing what matters most. Not consistently, not reliably. Your mind will invent reasons. Your body will demand rest. Your emotions will cry for distraction. And if you don't learn to override these momentary signals, you will waste your years surrendering to invisible enemies. Every great achievement is born from resistance. Resistance to laziness. Resistance to fear. resistance to feelings of futility. The man who forces himself forward when he feels nothing is the man who gains everything, because in those moments of numbness where others quit, you will rise. You must understand that your destiny is not written in sparks of motivation. It's written in the ink of discipline, on pages soaked with repetition. In the silence of solitary effort, there will be seasons where you don't see results, don't feel purpose, don't even remember why you began. And those are the seasons that test whether you're building a legacy or just chasing a trend. Those are the days when it's easier to scroll than to think, to talk than to build, to wish than to work. But if you stand firm, if you act without permission from your emotions, you will step into a rare level of power. You will not just survive those seasons, you will dominate them. Too many men waste years building momentum only to abandon it the moment they stop feeling it. They start the business, the workout, the relationship, the dream, but the minute the feelings vanish, they vanish with them. They don't realize that every breakthrough is hidden behind a layer of emotional resistance. The boredom, the fear, the fatigue, they are not signs to stop. They are signs you are near something meaningful. And if you keep moving, if you force yourself through the silence, you will discover that feelings are followers, not leaders. They catch up when you lead. Imagine what your life would look like if you acted without needing to feel inspired. If your default was execution, not hesitation. If you made decisions based on principle, not impulse. That version of you is not a fantasy. It's not reserved for the ultra-disciplined or genetically gifted. It's available to any man who stops treating emotion as king and starts treating commitment as law. But it takes work, hard, lonely, invisible work. It takes getting up early when the bed is warm. It takes working late when the mind is tired. It takes shutting out noise, shutting down excuses, and sharpening your edge every day whether you feel like it or not. This level of power does not arrive suddenly. It is earned inch by inch in moments of decision. It is built every time you say yes to the hard thing and no to the easy escape. Every time you keep your word when no one's watching. Every time you build when you feel broken. Every time you choose purpose over pleasure. And the more you choose that path, the more you build a self you can trust. A self that doesn't disappear in discomfort, that doesn't fold under fear, that doesn't wait for external fuel to ignite internal fire. Understand this. No one is coming to save you from the burden of inconsistency. No one is going to call you every morning to remind you of your potential. No one is going to build your dream for you. It's on you. And the sooner you realize that, the sooner you start moving with urgency, intensity, and independence. The world is full of men waiting to feel ready, while the few who force themselves forward are taking the land, seizing the opportunities, winning the battles. The man who forces himself when he feels nothing becomes immune to weakness. He becomes the kind of man who doesn't flinch at resistance. He expects it. He doesn't wait for the mood. He creates momentum. He doesn't fear the silence. He commands it. That's not just strength, that's leadership. That's power. That's mastery. And that's exactly what separates the ordinary from the unstoppable. So when the feelings fade, when your motivation is gone, when you're tired, uncertain, uninspired, that's the signal. That's the moment to act. That's the moment that builds the muscle of a legend. Push then. Move then, build then. Because if you can master those moments, you can master your life. And if this voice lit a fire in your soul, subscribe to our channel, Oliver Napoleon Hill, because we are here to wake up the greatness within you and teach you how to dominate from the inside out.